OpenAI fights back while Xbox takes the prize. Happy Friday, friends. It has been a little bit, took some time off, but we are back into the hot seat. Hopefully everybody had a wonderful week. June has somehow eclipsed us, if you will. It's the end of June, and if you're in the Midwest where I am, the cicadas are now gone and the heat is here. So it's getting spicy outside. But the tech news and the Xbox news, especially the Xbox news this week, was kind of out of control. So let's just dive in here. Hopefully you had a wonderful week. Let's go. Tech news kicking it off here. The Better Business Bureau is forcing some changes, or at least trying to force some changes upon how Microsoft is advertising Microsoft Copilot, saying, hey, look, they are stretching the truth about where all this functionality is and how it works and functions and exists. And so they're calling Microsoft out. Now, granted, the BBB is not a government entity, but it is a watchdog. It does have some weight behind it. So Microsoft, it looks like they're going to be making some tweaks here about how they advertise Copilot and its current functionality. Speaking of functionality, Windows Hello no longer really works in dark scenes, and so Microsoft has pushed out an update and said, look, they're trying to deal with a spoofing vulnerability, if you will, in darker scenes, and so you got to be in a bright light room if you want it to be working. The IR sensors, which were supposed to sort of mitigate that, appear to not be working as well as somewhat expected. So other Copilot things that are now available, Copilot Vision, which is the thing that allows it to see your screen and hopefully walk you through some tutorials like how to use Photoshop or things like that, are now starting to come online. Now, this is something you do have to turn on, so just keep that all in mind. But hey, it is starting to roll out for supported devices. Something that will be more useful probably to the mass audience here is Snipping Tool is getting a new GIF or GIF, depending on how you pronounce your G's and J's, right into it. Now, I hope that this functionality works better than what actually you can do in Clipchamp. Clipchamp supports GIF export, but it's bad. It's like super low res. Now, there are some options for low res and higher res solutions, or options, I should say, in Clipchamp, in Snipping Tool. So that gives me some hope that things are going to be where you need to be. And right now I use, Screen to GIF is what I use currently to create all my fancy GIFs for everything. And so maybe this will replace that. I'm not sure. We got to wait and see, because Screen to GIF has a ton of functionality and fine grained controls that allow you to get good quality GIFs without blowing the memory bank, if you will. But anyways, that is, I believe, starting to roll out to insider programs right now. Now, on the not so good side, and this is something I've been hearing for a while now, Microsoft is planning thousands of more job cuts. Now, while Bloomberg in their report says it's aimed at salespeople, which I do believe is accurate, I think the cuts are going to be wider than that. I think they're going to be a little bit more broader than that, and I think they're going to impact things that people are going to be upset about. If you follow me on X and Blue Sky or whatever, and I tweeted out kind of mysteriously, buckle up, it's related to the layoff stuff, and I think there's more coming, and more than just what Bloomberg is talking about here, and I think they're going to be pretty wide. This is on top of, by the way, the 6,000 cuts they've already announced. So this is like, they're really trimming things up. Now, the reason is, why is this going to be happening in early July is when this is supposed to be happening? It's because the fiscal year for Microsoft ends on June 30th, and that is why. So be on the lookout for that, because I think there's going to be more coming. And yeah. All right. OpenAI and Microsoft have found themselves at a little bit of an impasse, if you will. OpenAI wants to restructure itself to be more like, candidly, like TLDR, more like a traditional tech company, more like a company in general that can make money and not be more of an open body, if you will. I don't know how else to describe it. Not a charity, because that's not accurate, but an open, research organization that's funded. And so as they try to do this restructuring, Microsoft has given them a lot of money and a lot of GPU and CPU compute in their cloud. And Microsoft's like pushing back here a little bit, because the OpenAI is turning out to be the competitor that Microsoft probably feared when this all got started. Like, hey, we'll invest in them. If they get to this point, at least we'll have a controlling stake or somewhat voice of an opinion about how they operate. And they're not a true one-to-one competitor, but they're getting there. Reason being, I believe it was announced, I think it was this past week, that OpenAI won a $200 million contract from the government, and that Microsoft had to be feeling a little burned by that, because, hey, like their partner who's supposed to be doing this stuff is stealing a lot of their business. And so, yes, people will say, but they have this agreement, and Microsoft gets X amount of revenues from OpenAI. And like, I'm not trying to discount all that, but all of those agreements are just lawyers, right? And they can be hashed out, and they'll try to wiggle themselves out. What I'm trying to say here is, these two companies who try to, on the surface, appear to be like friendly and right, taking selfies together and hanging out, There's a lot of turmoil behind the scenes. There's a lot. And it is far from like, hey, we're best buddies right now. And we will see. I'm not expecting OpenAI try to rug pull Microsoft. That would be cataclysmic for Microsoft. Now, there's a lot of legal things going on that would prevent all that. At least, that's what the contracts say. But at the end of the day, OpenAI sort of leaked to the press. I'm assuming it was somewhat intentional. Like Microsoft is, these are like anti-competitive practices, right? You have OpenAI, who is growing up and turning into a very real enterprise. Not even very real. I mean, they already are a massive juggernaut within the industry. And you have Microsoft, the legacy titan, who funded all this. And then all of a sudden, they're trying to control them. And granted, you could say, well, when they invested, they were not supposed to do this kind of stuff. But here we are. We have two mega corporations, two very large personalities going at each other in the public, and boy, is it going to be fun to watch. There's going to be some great tell-all books in a few years about what's actually happening and how this all transpires. I personally think Microsoft has more to lose here. OpenAI can pretty much get any kind of money and probably any deals they want at this point, while as Microsoft is really dependent on them to deliver new technologies. Especially for like Copilot, right? We just announced all that Copilot stuff. A lot of that is spin-outs from what ChatGPT or OpenAI is doing. Now, somebody will point out, it's like, yeah, some of this is Microsoft too, and it absolutely is. But if ChatGPT or OpenAI suddenly said, look, we're cutting off all of our latest models to Microsoft, they would be in a world of hurt. Now, Microsoft could turn around and say, well, if you're not going to do that, we're not going to give you the data center stuff. And that would really hurt them. But who would recover faster? I would have to think that ChatGPT, OpenAI would be able to recover faster than Microsoft could because, hey, they just need GPU and compute, which is a quantity that exists in the world. Now, granted, maybe not at the scale that they currently need, which is why Microsoft said recently they're not building out more GPU data centers and everything else specifically for OpenAI. Like, they've done their part, and that's why they said go find other people, because the investment Microsoft makes continues to be massive. But I think this is the thing to keep an eye on. I find this like extremely, extremely fascinating. So while there's trouble in paradise, Microsoft also accidentally replaced the Windows 11 startup sound with one from Vista this past week. They claim it was an accident. I think it was like an oopsies, because why would you even be screwing with that? And if you're familiar with what Apple announced at WWDC, the liquid glass, which is a lot, and I mean a lot, like Aero from the Vista days, it just seems like it was a nice little jab to see like, hey, yeah, we were here too. And they claimed it was an oopsies. I don't know if it was. Now, on to the gaming news, which the gaming news falls into like that OpenAI category of like cataclysmic stuff that I think is happening. So there were two key announcements this week, one coming from Xbox and the other one coming from AMD. Xbox came out and said, look, we are building a next generation of consoles, handhelds, and other Xbox experiences. Like, that is a known thing, right? They've done the ROG Ally. This is an Xbox. And they're like, we are still building stuff. Keep it going, keep it happy, whatever else you want to call it. And then on the back of that, AMD is also like, hey, yes, we are working with Microsoft, and we're working on a new generation of chips that are going to expand across multiple devices. And so when you look at these two announcements side by side, which on the YouTube channel there are two deep dive videos on each one, because there's a lot. Because in the Microsoft one, they talk about multiple stores. They basically confirm that Steam screenshot that was an accident was actually very real, and that you'll be able to play Steam games in some capacity. We don't know. And then you've got the AMD side saying there's multiple chips. Like, what the heck does that mean? So here's like my if you crunch all this together, here's what I think the narrative that is coming together. I believe, at least as of right now, what these two leaders have said, and what I believe if you piece everything we know together, there's obviously a next generation console coming from Microsoft, but a console in quotations, if you will. What I believe it will be is that AMD will have a defined chipset. So it'll be a CPU, a GPU, and Microsoft will probably also require, remember the chipset that used to be in the Surface Studio that would allow you to connect natively the Xbox controller. So if you have this particular sort of hardware parameters, if you will, that will be considered an Xbox, like an Xbox console, or play Xbox native games, because that has been the hiccup through all of this are Xbox native games. And Sarah Bond in her video talks about forward and backwards compatibility. Lisa Su in the AMD video talks about forward and backwards compatibility. There was a weird leak, I don't know the authenticity of it, that's saying like, hey, Microsoft has a team called Xbox Classics trying to bring Xbox Classics to the Windows platform. I believe that is already happening. That's part of their compatibility layer that they are working on. And so when you look at these two announcements, especially the AMD side where they say multiple chips, here's what I think we're going to see. I think we are going to see the generation of consoles is dead. Like, at least in the world of Xbox, maybe not in Switch, but even PlayStation, it's still, generations have all melted together. So AMD comes out with a chipset that defined by Microsoft and says if it meets these parameters, you'll be able to play Xbox native games on that device. And then next year, they might come out with an upgraded chipset that does the same thing. You got to remember, Xbox and AMD have been working together for years. This is not new stuff. They know exactly the hardware requirements needed to play Xbox native games, and then Microsoft enables it with Windows. And they can do it. They should be able to do it without emulation, because that would seem foolish for the newer gen stuff. And so that's what it's going to be. And so every year you could buy a new Xbox. There is no Xbox. It'll be Xbox 26, Xbox 27. I don't think they will go with those names, but you could upgrade your console without waiting for Microsoft to do it. It's more and more PC-like. However, the analogous here would be go look at the Copilot Plus PCs. They follow a certain demographic guideline of like, how do you become a Copilot Plus PC? Well, you got to have an NPU, you got to have certain chipsets, you got to have certain functionality and certain visual display things. And so that is what they will do for Xbox. They will define that parameter. Lenovo could build an Xbox device if you want. Asus, all these guys. I'm not sure if you'll be able to do it at home yet, but it seems like that would be the natural extension. And so there you go. Now, the big issue here through all of this is how is Microsoft going to define or delineate, if you will, between devices that can run Xbox native games and games that are play anywhere, cloud streaming, or anything else like that, right? Because at some point there will be titles that only work on Xbox native, specifically backwards compatibility. I'd have to imagine forwards compatibility is like everything's just going to be there, but like you take an old title that works on Xbox One, Xbox Series X, I don't know, pick your favorite title that is available there that is not native on PC at this time. How does that game work? And how does Microsoft determine which devices through marketing, how do they clear that up? If that makes sense, hopefully I'm coming through here. That is one question that we don't know, and there's still a lot to unfold here. It is worth pointing out that Microsoft announced the Scarlett generation of devices in June of, I believe, 2019, and the devices shipped the following fall, which would mean that this experience that we will learn about here over the coming months, or over a year, I should say, would likely be shipping in 2026, which also, by the way, friends, aligns to the fact, remember they're like, hey, Forza next year, and like their bigger first-party branded titles are coming in 2026 from their, remember they just had that event? I think this all aligns, right? You get your core Xbox game title franchises shipping with the new generation of stuff next year, and that everything sort of comes together in a nice, neat package. So it's a really, this is the kickoff for the hype and for the marketing event for the next generation of Xbox console stuff. Super interesting. Anyways, let's see. There's a new Vibrant overhauls for Minecraft that is now available, and there's a bunch of new titles coming to Game Pass. Oops, that's slightly off-centered on the screen. Let's just drag that up. Notably, a lot of WoW titles, not Owen Wilson WoW, but WoW titles, World of Warcraft and Call of Duty World War II coming to Game Pass here in the very, very near future. So, also, Indiana Jones The Great Circle is getting its first DLC, which will launch in September, which is fascinating. All right, let's jump into the questions of the week, because, friends, there are a lot, and that makes me so happy. So let's see if I screwed this up, and I think this is what broke the audio last week. So hopefully this does it. I'm not going to scroll, because when I scrolled last time, I think it adjusted my audio volume, and it just blew everything out of the water. So we are going to dive into the questions here. Sydney2K says, so I read that Anduril and Meta are teaming up to provide mixed reality for the U.S. and Army. Wait, wasn't that mostly Microsoft providing the U.S. Army? What happened here? So, oh baby. So there's a lot there. First off, Meta just announced a deal with Oakley, right? And those things got announced today. So I think Meta is just trying to grab all the DoD dollars that it can. It's got some VR stuff. They're trying to, remember they spent tens of billions of dollars on their virtual worlds. I can't even remember what it's called. That was, it seems like a complete flop, but I think they're trying to repurpose some of that technology into this experience, and that's why they're going after it. So I think that is where things are headed. So, 24 Bauer says, with Microsoft looking more and more like they are phasing out physical media, no physical editions of Gears Reloaded, Ninja Gaiden, Outer Worlds 2, but seemingly doubling down on backwards compatibility for next gen, what does that look like for the original Xbox, Xbox 360, or Xbox One games on next gen? Yeah, this is a wonderful and fair question, because if you think about it, Microsoft is giving all the indication. Even look at their latest hardware releases, right? I was trying to figure out when did they release those? In the fall here. So they only had the disk drive in their top tier one, which was over $500. Like, people are going to get angry, but it's like physical media for Microsoft is dead. You know, that's the reality. It may not be exactly right today, and it might be that there are Xbox stuff in the future that may have some, but like, guys, you can fight what Microsoft is doing or just accept it like this is going to happen. And so it's going to happen. And now, what does it mean for backwards compatibility stuff? Well, Microsoft has done a good job of bringing everything up into the digital world, the digital realm. That's where they want to be. It wouldn't surprise me if there are options for like device drives you can plug in that might enable it. But even then, what I would actually expect to happen is that drive would then load the game and then go download the new thing rather than trying to do it off disk. Because again, disks and intersection points like that are vulnerabilities and things, and Microsoft doesn't want to take that risk, not only from a security perspective, but from like, then they have to physically manufacture this stuff. And it's like, hey, we already know they're trying to make margin wherever they can, so good luck. Good luck. So that would be my expectations at this point, for better or for worse. Chargasm says, talk about Microsoft Wards and Xbox. We need them in more places like Finland. So I learned something new today. I did not know that rewards were not available in Finland. So there you go. I talked about them. I don't have any good insight, like if that's coming over to there. You could try. What's the guy's name on Twitter? He's very active about it. If you go really dig through who I follow on Twitter, you would find out the individual who runs that stuff, and you could tweet out and be like, bring it to Finland. MetJet fan says, how will the next consoles and future PCs run current Xbox games? Emulation, meaning one day all Xbox games will be like PC games. So I think the last part of that statement, I think, is the accurate portion here. That a little hesitation in my voice there, but like the next generation of games that come out are going to be very PC-like. The reason why they're not exactly like that is because, remember, you still have to have the Xbox integration, the Xbox entire platform. Like, that is what makes Xbox at the end of the day. And so that changes things up just a little bit, because PC games obviously don't have that integration. So there's some intermingling, if you will, of the code bases there. So I expect, right, remember, games that launch now are already, I think, mandatory, at least from first-party Xbox Play Anywhere titles. So Microsoft has already been bridging this gap for a long time. Anything that's Xbox Play Anywhere, which they also just did that big push. I think they said over 1,000 titles now, Xbox Play Anywhere. For the next generation experience, they're just going to work. They're just going to work. And so I think that's the future here, is that even current gen titles are very PC-like. And so it's not this huge leap. When people think consoles, at least in my brain, I think of like taking that plastic cartridge and smacking it down. That's the console experience, where all the game is on that plastic thing, and then you just do it, right? It's not downloading, it's not connecting, not pool, patch, and whatever. That experience is like yesterday, and that's the reality of it. And so the future is very much, to nutshell this, not much more, almost exactly like the PC model, which the current gen stuff is already like it. Because someone will say, well, there's so many different hardware configurations. Well, there's already 2 for the Xbox console. And so Microsoft can limit hardware configurations for Xbox native experiences through that program that they will likely be building out. Mr. DB Crossner, I should say Mr. PKI. How about this one for an ending question of the week? Oh, it's not the ending question because of the way YouTube sorts things, but we'll go with this. How did you like the Vista startup sound on the latest Windows 11 build? Are we going retro now? I will say the one thing that we can credit Apple for is Apple made Vista the hottest old OS overnight from the Windows perspective, right? I'm not going to go too deep into Liquid Glass. I don't like where it's at currently. There's a lot of reasons why, not just because it looks like Aero, but because there's like usability and functionality issues. But it's still only dev build. Let's wait until September or October when it actually ships to see how they modify things going forward. Peter says, is the next Xbox going to have an Xbox SKU, or will it just be Windows-based console? Well, the current console is already Windows-based. That's the thing that people don't always connect here. Like the Xbox OS is based on Windows. Like that is a known thing. Now, it's a very stripped down, streamlined experience. And so what I think the next generation of Xbox, like if this laptop in front of me, which is a laptop studio, were Xbox certified. Here's my expectation, that I would have an Xbox controller like this. I can come press and hold this button down just like I turn on my console, and it would turn this laptop on into the exact Xbox experience that I get over on my console that I always point that way for, because nobody knows what's over there but me, but it's my TV and everything else. And so that is the expectation for that whole program. And then you're just playing Xbox native games directly on this device. And so it's already running Windows. Sarah Bond in her video talked about how they're going to work with Windows. That's already happening, right? These things are just, they're two birds of the same feather. Wait, two birds of the same feather. I don't know. I don't even know if that made sense. I don't even know if that was a good analogy. Anyways, that is my expectation. Press button, get Xbox. And I got to tell you guys, like, people are all wound up about this. I don't care. Here's what I care. I care that I hold down this button, my device, whatever the heck it is, turns on, my library of games are there natively. I don't want to be streaming this stuff. My games are there natively. And most importantly, the Xbox experience, not the games, the friends list, the achievements, the integration from pulling people into parties is all there. As long as that's, I don't care what Xbox does. I just want to be able to play my games like I play them on a console today with better visuals and faster performance. That's it. If I can play it in more places on more devices, and the device that I buy isn't some monolithic tower from Xbox, I don't care. As long as my content is there, my friends are there, and the experience is better than what we have today, that's all that matters. I will go on the record and say that if this transition that Xbox is going through goes poorly, and like we have like a Master Chief situation, Master Chief Collection situation, I think Phil Spencer would be out immediately at Xbox. I think that would be gotta have a little tangent there, but anyways. Mr. PKI says, did I see that there's going to be some new Indiana Jones DLC coming? Yes, I have not finished the campaign. I have not. Will Xbox add adaptive triggers to its controller? I don't know if they will. I'm thinking what I've heard so far. I'm not confident if they will. Sydney 2K says, a second question. With the news of the Xbox team and Windows team to create a unified gaming on Windows operating system, could we see more variants of Windows specialized perform tasks? For example, a version of Windows maximized video performance. So yes and no. I hope not, though. Like, I don't want to have to go out and buy a new SKU. Like, there's Windows Home, there's Windows Pro, there's Windows Enterprise. You don't want to have to buy one that's called Windows Gaming, Windows Xbox. Microsoft could do it, but it's only going to erode the narrative that is Xbox. And so it's like, oh, you actually want to play games on your version of Windows? Well, we have an optimized version. You got to give us another $79 or whatever it is. You got to get that version. Now, there might be a Windows Xbox variant. I don't know if you'd be able to buy that. That would be my expectation, that it works like the system that we're seeing on the ROG, Ally X, I believe, Ally X, yeah. And so, like, I think there's something in the works, but I don't know if it's going to be a specific edition. I don't think we're going to see Media Center Edition come back, if you will. However, I could be completely wrong, so we'll see. Jovia says, Brad, do you think this co-development between Xbox and AMD Silicon for Xbox is similar to Apple Pro Max and Ultra versions? No, I don't. But instead being exclusive to a platform, no, not. So, right, Xbox and AMD are working together on this thing. And his question is this going to be some sort of exclusive only Microsoft does? I do not think that is going to be the case. I don't think Microsoft wants to take that risk. I don't think there's a lot of reward for Microsoft to do that. Now, AMD is supposedly working on ARM chips. I don't think that's where this is going, but they are working on them. But I expect that these Xbox chips things that AMD is working on are not going to be locked exclusively to the towers of consoles, if you will, like we had historically seen at the end of the day. And I hate passwords, no, seriously, 4809. Some Twitter conversations have been around the fact that the PlayStation enthusiasts have asserted Final Fantasy VI has not sold well on Xbox. Do you believe that Square and other third-party developers will take Sony exclusive deal and then eventually port them to Xbox, or will developers try to support simultaneous launches? Well, there's math involved. So first off, the poor sales of Final Fantasy on Xbox were based on the number of reviews, which is not a good metric for doing this. They just basically took fractional percentages of how many people left reviews. That means how many people sold, which is a theory and it is used, but don't get too caught up in that. The math really comes down to, so let's say you're going to build a game and you're going to sell it on PlayStation and you expect it to make $1 million on PlayStation. And then you're going to say, okay, we could also easily bring this over to PlayStation or Xbox because Microsoft has made that easy, especially next gen stuff. And we expect we will make $400,000 there. Sony walks in and says, we'll give you $600,000 to not do that. Like, the math makes sense, right? And so it's up to Microsoft to prove that putting the product on their platform will actually make them more money than Sony would typically offer when doing an exclusive deal, something like that. So there you go. What a crazy, wonderful, and wild week. Hopefully all this turns out, and by turns out I mean hoping this recording works as expected, because I don't want to redo this. But hopefully, my friends, you had a wonderful week. And as always, make sure to keep it subscribed here, because the only BS on this channel is me.